In the old empire, silence was considered a form of loyalty. The palace slept early. Lanterns were dimmed before midnight. Voices were lowered after dusk. And yet, on the final night of the emperor's reign, no one truly slept. The empire had no name that survives today. It existed long before maps were precise, before borders were fixed, before history learned how to protect itself from forgetting. What remains is not a record, but a story passed quietly from one keeper to the next. They say the emperor was young, not reckless, not cruel, and not weak. He had ruled for only a short time, but long enough to notice something was wrong. Not wrong in the way rebellions begin, not wrong in the way famine spreads, wrong in the way patterns repeat when they are not supposed to. Every emperor before him had died too neatly. One illness, one fall, one sudden peaceful passing, and every transition had happened overnight. The records described it as stability. The court praised it as order. But the emperor saw it for what it was, a system that knew how to erase. He began by asking harmless questions. Why were certain years missing from the archives? Why did some scrolls end mid-sentence? Why were entire reigns summarized in a single line? The ministers smiled. The historians bowed. And they changed the subject. At night, the emperor could not rest. Sleep came in fragments. Dreams arrived without endings. Each morning, he woke with the same thought, someone before me discovered this. And each morning, that thought frightened him more. He ordered a private review of the imperial records. Not the copies, not the ceremonial versions, the originals. They were kept beneath the palace, where the air was cool, and footsteps echoed longer than they should. There, in the dim light, the emperor saw it clearly. Entire lives had been removed, not destroyed in anger, but edited with care. Names replaced by blanks, dates adjusted by a single year. Successions rewritten to appear smooth. This was not chaos. This was design. That night, the emperor dismissed his guards early. He told no one where he was going. He carried no seal, no sword, only a single scroll he had not yet read. It was older than the palace, older than the dynasty, and it ended with a warning written in faded ink. Some truths do not survive the morning. By dawn, the emperor was gone. No announcement was made. No bells were rung. The court assembled as usual. A new ruler was named, and the empire continued, as if nothing had happened. The empire continued, as if nothing had changed. But the shadows remembered. Hidden deep within the palace, there existed a council no one spoke of openly. Not ministers, not generals, not even the emperor himself had authority over them. They were the keepers of continuity, the guardians of silence. They monitored every scroll, every ledger, every account of life and death. They were not cruel, but they understood the cost of memory. One wrong word could unravel generations. One unguarded record could reveal what the empire could not survive. And the young emperor had stumbled onto something dangerous. Something that could not be ignored. On the night of his disappearance, the council performed their silent ritual. It was simple in appearance, yet profound in effect. A single candle burned, not for light, but for attention. Scrolls were gathered, and the names of rulers were recited aloud, not as history, but as intention. The spoken words carried weight, a weight that could bend memory itself. Each line corrected a flaw, erased a trace, and smoothed the edges of time. And in the quiet, the emperor was removed. Removed not with violence, but with absence. Like a dream that dissolves upon waking. No one saw him leave. No one saw the council perform their work. Yet when the morning came, everything was in its proper place. The courtiers remarked that the empire had never been more peaceful. The historians marveled at the seamless transition. And the palace hummed with normal life, as if the previous night had been nothing more than a gentle breeze. But small signs lingered. A single unfinished scroll. A bell that did not ring. A painting with one face faintly smudged. These whispers of memory were never enough to alert the public. Yet those attuned could feel them. A subtle trembling beneath the empire's calm surface. The young emperor had learned too much. But his curiosity would not vanish entirely. It lived on, in fragments of whispers, in dreams of those who would one day piece together the story. And in the silent moments, when the wind passed through empty corridors, it seemed as if he were still watching, still remembering, still questioning. Still waiting for the moment history might allow him to speak again. The empire had a secret way of preserving itself. It was not in walls or armies. It was in the mind. Future rulers were carefully observed, even from their earliest days. They were taught to speak politely, to nod, to learn, but not to question too deeply. Curiosity was a dangerous companion. Knowledge, unchecked, could awaken the shadows of the council. Legends spoke of emperors who disappeared quietly. Some said they were taken by spirits. Some claimed they had fled to another realm. Few remembered the truth. The empire had erased them. Yet the story persisted in fragments. A lullaby sung by palace servants. A proverb whispered among scholars. A line of poetry that seemed to pause at the name of the vanished ruler. The lesson was subtle, almost imperceptible. Sleep was sacred, but so was vigilance. Dreams were private, but history belonged to the empire. Rulers learned to fall asleep lightly, to dream in ways that did not reveal too much, to question only what the council allowed. It was a careful balance, a dance between curiosity and survival. Those who failed were forgotten, their reigns erased from memory, their names smudged in the annals of time. But for those who mastered the art, life could continue almost normally. Almost. Stories of the vanished emperor spread quietly, a shadow beneath everyday life. Children were told gentle tales of a young ruler who had seen too much. Older servants recounted dreams in which the emperor appeared, watching, warning, waiting. Some scholars began to suspect the pattern. A missing year here, a blank page there, a repeated phrase that seemed strangely out of place. Yet nothing could be proven. Evidence faded like mist at dawn. And still, the empire endured. Because memory was fluid. Because history could be rewritten. Because those who understood the secret slept lightly, and those who dreamed too deeply vanished. The vanished emperor, though erased, continued to exist in these faint echoes. In dreams, in whispers, in the quiet pauses of recorded history. And when the empire slept, he was there. Not in body, but in presence. A gentle reminder that even silence has its own voice. Among the few things the young emperor carried on that final night, one object was most significant, a single scroll. It was small, delicate, and wrapped in faded silk. Its edges were frayed. Its ink, though ancient, had not completely faded. The council had noticed it immediately, not because they were afraid of its contents, but because it represented possibility, the possibility of knowledge that could not be controlled. The scroll told stories the empire had long forgotten. Stories of rulers who had challenged the council and vanished. Stories of alliances that never made it to official records. Stories of dreams that had once changed the fate of empires. The emperor had read it quietly, by candlelight. He had memorized fragments. He had whispered the words to himself, careful that no servant could hear. He believed the scroll held the key to freedom, the key to understanding the patterns the council worked so hard to conceal. When the council arrived that night, the scroll was gone. Or rather, it was no longer in the hands of the emperor. It was placed in a secure chamber, its secrets sealed by ritual. Yet the scroll did not vanish entirely. Parts of it remained in shadows. In dreams, it whispered to those who listened closely. In the soft rustle of papers, it hinted at truths just beyond reach. Legends grew from this scroll, that it could reveal the future, that it could restore the erased, that it carried the voice of the vanished emperor himself. Some said it had the power to undo the council's work. Others claimed it could only be read by those who slept lightly, whose minds were sharp but gentle, able to balance curiosity with caution. For centuries, scholars sought it. Historians searched for it. Adventurers dreamed of it. Yet it remained hidden, as it had been that final night, its presence a quiet echo beneath the empire's grand halls. And in the silence, the emperor's story lived on. Not in official records, not in grand monuments, but in the gentle rhythm of memory, in the whispers of dreams, and in the faint, lingering hope that truth, no matter how deeply erased, could one day awaken again. The empire's survival depended on more than walls or armies. It relied on control of memory, not just of the people, but of the rulers themselves. The council, unseen and patient, watched over each new emperor. They taught, guided, and sometimes corrected. Their lessons were subtle. A word spoken here, a dream interpreted there, a story told at bedtime that carried more instruction than entertainment. Future emperors learned the patterns without realizing it. They knew when to ask questions. They learned when to remain silent. They discovered the rhythm of history without ever touching the threads too tightly. And yet, despite these precautions, the legend of the vanished emperor persisted. It grew slowly, like a shadow stretching with the sunrise. Whispered stories of his wisdom, dreams that recalled his presence, subtle signs in manuscripts that hinted at a life erased, but not forgotten. The council understood the danger of these legends, but they also knew that complete erasure was impossible. Memory, even when hidden, finds a way to leak. And so, they let the stories exist quietly, never correcting them fully, never encouraging them. A soft reminder that the empire had limits, even in its control. For those who slept in the palace, there were signs. A candle left burning too long. A scroll out of place. A faint echo of laughter in an empty hall. These whispers reminded the empire that some truths could not be entirely hidden. And for those attuned, the vanished emperor became a silent teacher, guiding through dreams, through stories, through the quiet spaces between moments. His legacy was not in monuments, not in gold, or in titles, or in battles. It was in memory, in the soft persistence of knowledge that refused to be erased. And so, the empire endured. Rulers came and went. Dynasties rose and fell. But the story of the young emperor who knew too much continued to drift softly through time. A lullaby for those who would listen carefully. A gentle warning for those who would dream deeply. And a quiet promise that no matter how complete the erasure, truth finds a way to linger. Waiting to be discovered, once again. Time flowed gently over the empire, and with it, the story of the vanished emperor became softer, quieter, like a river that never quite disappears. Legends took on shapes suitable for each generation. In some towns, he was a wise ruler who walked among the people unseen. In others, he was a guardian of dreams, guiding children through visions of safety and knowledge. And in the quiet libraries of the capital, scholars whispered of a ruler who had seen the invisible threads of history itself. Even sleep carried his memory. Dreams became a subtle teaching tool, a way to pass knowledge without leaving a mark on official records. People began to notice patterns in their dreams, though they could not explain why. A particular image, a gentle voice, a recurring symbol. Stories say that those who dreamed most clearly, most deeply, could feel his presence. They would awaken with new ideas, new understanding, as if the vanished emperor had touched their minds in the night. The council, wise and cautious, observed this quietly. They allowed small fragments of his influence to persist. Not enough to challenge the order of the empire, but enough to remind those who paid attention that some truths, however hidden, always survive. Festivals and songs grew from these whispers. A melody carried through lantern-lit streets, telling of a ruler who disappeared but never truly left. In temples, prayers for wisdom and insight often invoked a figure who had been erased from history, though no name was ever spoken aloud. And so, across generations, the vanished emperor became both shadow and light. A guide for those who sought understanding, a mystery for those who only followed tradition, a presence felt in the quietest moments before sleep, when the mind wanders and imagination flows freely. Even now, centuries later, some say that if you sleep in certain rooms of the old palaces, or walk through corridors at dusk, you might hear the faintest echo of his steps. A whisper, almost too soft to catch. A memory lingering between the walls, a story refusing to be entirely forgotten. In dreams, he lives on. In stories, he teaches. And in silence, he waits, patient as the night itself, reminding the empire, and all who listen, that history is never truly gone. Centuries passed. The empire's walls aged, its cities changed, and its people moved like currents across the land. Yet the legacy of the vanished emperor persisted. Not in textbooks, not in monuments, but in quiet rituals and subtle habits. Parents would hum gentle songs at night, telling stories of a ruler who understood the mind more than the body, who taught lessons without ever being seen. Children would drift to sleep under lantern light, their dreams guided by melodies older than the oldest scholar. Monks in distant temples kept quiet records. They documented the patterns of sleep and memory, and sometimes spoke of a figure who had once walked among rulers, whose disappearance had taught generations to value reflection, thought, and caution. Even governors and scholars, centuries removed from the council, followed traditions without knowing their origin. A subtle bow before resting, a whispered question before reading old texts, a careful attention to what one remembered and what one forgot. These practices were so gentle, so ingrained in daily life, that most did not notice them as anything unusual. And yet, for those attuned, they were reminders that the vanished emperor's influence endured. Sleep, once a private act, became a tool for wisdom. Dreams were regarded not only as rest, but as guidance. And stories, told quietly, carried lessons across centuries. Lessons that could not be erased, no matter how carefully history tried to fold itself over the past. Legends multiplied. Some claimed he returned in dreams, guiding those who were lost or confused. Others said he watched over the empire silently, a gentle guardian of memory and thought. And so, long after the council's rituals, long after the empire's walls crumbled and rebuilt, and long after names were rewritten or forgotten, the essence of the vanished emperor remained. A soft, persistent whisper in the mind, a calming presence in the night, a reminder that even in absence, understanding can endure. In every quiet room, in every gentle dream, he lives on. Waiting, watching, teaching. Even as centuries passed, the vanished emperor's presence lingered, not in textbooks or museums, but in the quiet rhythms of daily life. In small villages, children grew up hearing tales of a ruler who had seen too much. Not as history, not as legend exactly, but as gentle stories told at bedtime. Stories meant to teach patience, reflection, and careful thought. In the cities, scholars noticed patterns in old texts that seemed to repeat mysteriously. Margins filled with notes that hinted at forgotten truths. Ancient scrolls that seemed to remember more than the historians intended. Even in ordinary homes, people unknowingly followed traditions inspired by him. A pause before reading an important letter. A soft question asked before making a difficult decision. A habit of reflection before sleep. These small acts were like threads connecting the present to the vanished emperor's past. Threads that carried wisdom, caution, and awareness. No one knew the origin. No one could trace it to him. And yet, they were there, quietly guiding thought and action. Some evenings, when the moonlight touched the walls of the oldest parts of the cities, and when the air was still and calm, those who slept lightly reported strange dreams. Dreams that offered insight. Dreams that felt like guidance. Dreams of a figure who vanished but never left entirely. It was said that if you listened carefully, if you allowed yourself to drift slowly into sleep, you might hear him in the silence. A gentle whisper in the rhythm of your breathing. A soft echo in the spaces between thought and dream. The vanished emperor's story had traveled centuries without a name, without a face, without proof. And yet, his presence endured. Not as a ruler, not as a legend, but as a soft, guiding force for anyone who chose to pay attention. In dreams, in stories, in the calm reflection before sleep, he remained. Waiting, watching, teaching. And so the empire's most secret ruler was never truly gone. He simply became a quiet part of the world, a presence felt only by those who slow their minds and allow themselves to remember. Time in the empire had a rhythm unlike any other. It flowed quietly, almost imperceptibly, like water sliding over smooth stones. Sleep, once ordinary, became a sacred part of that rhythm. It was not merely rest. It was a bridge between what was remembered and what was forgotten. A place where lessons lingered, and where the vanished emperor's presence quietly shaped thought. Legends said that those who slept deeply, yet lightly at the same time, could feel the ebb and flow of history. that dreams could carry knowledge from one generation to the next, and that the patterns of memory were alive, like invisible threads connecting every moment to what came before. The vanished emperor had understood this. He had seen how sleep could protect the mind, how dreams could preserve truths too dangerous for the waking world, and how absence, carefully managed, could be more powerful than presence. For centuries, those who followed the quiet teachings of the emperor did not know his name. They only knew the feeling of being guided, the sensation that history itself was breathing softly around them. Even in the modern world of the empire's distant descendants, these patterns persisted. A pause before speaking, a question asked in gentle reflection, a dream that offered insight long before an answer arrived. The emperor had been erased from history, but not from the world. He lived in the spaces between thought and memory, in the quiet stretches of time when sleep gently carried the mind forward. And so, even as centuries passed, even as dynasties rose and fell, the lessons of the vanished emperor endured. A soft whisper in the night, a guiding presence in dreams, and a reminder that even what is erased can continue to shape the world. For those willing to listen, to drift slowly into quiet reflection, his story was never truly gone. And in that gentle stillness, he waits. As the centuries unfolded, the story of the vanished emperor became a quiet presence in the empire. Not loud, not commanding, but persistent. Like a soft wind through the corridors of memory, or the gentle rhythm of a lantern swaying in the night. He had been erased from history, yet his influence continued to shape thought, dreams, and behavior. Every ruler who came after learned, whether consciously or not, to tread carefully between curiosity and caution, to observe, reflect, and respect the quiet rules that governed memory itself. The empire endured not because of armies or conquest, but because it understood the subtle power of what is remembered and what is forgotten. For ordinary people, the vanished emperor's legacy was even gentler. It lived in stories told at bedtime, in songs hummed softly, in dreams that carried guidance without explanation. Even those who never knew his name felt the lessons of patience, awareness, and reflection in their daily lives. Sleep became more than rest. It became a way to connect with the past, to feel the presence of those who had come before, and to carry forward the wisdom that time itself could not erase. And so, as the empire moved through centuries, and as history was written and rewritten countless times, one truth remained. Absence does not mean the end. Erasure does not mean oblivion. And even the quietest story, told softly in the shadows of memory, can endure for generations. The vanished emperor, erased from all official records, remained alive in the gentle spaces between thought and dream. Waiting, watching, teaching. And in the calm, When night falls and minds drift into sleep, his presence can still be felt. A soft whisper in the mind, a quiet guidance in the heart, a story that refuses to be forgotten, carried gently, silently, through the flow of time itself. Over the centuries, the empire quietly accumulated stories. Stories of emperors who ruled briefly, whose names were forgotten, whose faces vanished from paintings, but whose wisdom lingered in subtle ways. Some rulers were gentle, some were harsh, some were clever beyond measure, and some, like the vanished emperor, disappeared entirely from official memory. Yet even when their names were erased, their influence remained. Lessons learned in their short reigns survived in whispers, in the way officials moved through the palace, or in the way scholars approached old texts. Dreams became a vessel for these lessons. It was said that the mind could carry knowledge further than memory allowed, that what was erased in the daylight could still exist in the night, and those who slept with awareness, who noticed subtle shifts in thought and perception, could feel guidance from rulers long gone. The vanished emperor's story became the template for this quiet transmission. It taught patience, it taught vigilance, and it taught that absence does not equal failure. Children grew up hearing fragments of his story, a lullaby that mentioned a ruler who disappeared, a proverb that hinted at wisdom found in quiet reflection, a dream that whispered answers when questions were asked carefully. Even adults felt traces of him, a sudden insight, a fleeting memory, a small sense that something beyond the surface was at work. And so, while the empire's history books recorded only what the council allowed, the living history, soft, hidden, and almost imperceptible, continued. A subtle rhythm passed from generation to generation, ensuring that those who could listen carefully would carry the wisdom of those who had been erased. Sleep, memory, and quiet attention became the true tools of power. The empire endured, not by conquest, but by understanding the unseen threads of knowledge, and the gentle guidance of those who had vanished, yet never truly left. Dreams were never ordinary in the empire. They carried the whispers of the past, the quiet guidance of rulers who had disappeared, and the soft teachings of the vanished emperor. Those who slept lightly felt a presence they could not name, a shadow that moved with patience, never loud, never demanding, but offering insight in gentle nudges. In these dreams, the emperor walked among the corridors of the mind. Rooms appeared that had no doors. Lanterns glowed softly, illuminating hallways lined with scrolls. Each scroll held a lesson, a warning, or a fragment of memory carefully preserved. Sometimes, the emperor spoke in riddles. Sometimes, he merely nodded, letting the dreamer find their own understanding. Every movement, every shadow, was purposeful. Every silence held meaning. The dreams taught patience. They taught attention to detail. They taught the quiet art of observation. And though the dreamers often woke with only fragments of what they had seen, the lessons remained. A gentle insight here, a subtle warning there, a feeling that the world was more complex than it appeared. Even the youngest children, sleeping under the dim glow of lanterns, could absorb the influence of the vanished emperor. Their imaginations became a bridge to understanding. Their curiosity guided. Their dreams offering small keys to wisdom, carefully hidden in history. The empire's elders understood these patterns. They taught, subtly, that sleep was not simply rest. It was an opportunity to learn without the constraints of records, laws, or councils. A way to connect to what had been erased, to touch what could not be written, and to carry the knowledge forward, gently, silently, through the night. And so, as the empire's people slept, the vanished emperor lived on. Not in memory alone, not in history books, but in the quiet places where thought and dreams meet. There, he continues to guide, softly, patiently, a teacher in the night. Over time, the empire developed subtle rituals, passed quietly from one generation to the next. They were never written in grand texts. They were whispered, performed in the calm of evening, and observed in silence. Families paused before lighting lanterns at night, offering a moment of reflection for what had been lost and what remained. Scholars placed a small token on their desks before sleep, a reminder that knowledge was fragile and must be treated gently. Even the simplest gestures carried meaning. A deep breath before closing one's eyes. A soft question whispered in the dark. A gentle touch of a scroll or book. These rituals were not mandatory. They were quiet guidance, a way for people to connect to what could not be spoken aloud. They taught the art of remembering without pride, of learning without claiming, and of observing without disturbing. The vanished emperor's influence flowed through these acts. In every ritual, there was a trace of his wisdom, the patience of silence, the care of attention, and the understanding that even erasure could not remove all truth. People began to notice the subtle patterns in their own lives. A habit formed, almost unconsciously, reflecting what they had absorbed from the stories, the dreams, and the quiet nights. Small insights appeared during waking hours, like the soft glow of a lantern that had been lit long ago. Even when emperors changed, even when councils grew new, even when cities shifted and scrolls were rewritten, the quiet influence of the vanished emperor endured. And at night, when sleep came, when the mind drifted softly into dreams, these rituals acted as bridges. They carried the whispers of history, the lessons of those who had been erased, and the gentle guidance of a ruler who had never truly left. In this way, memory and dream intertwined, and the story of the vanished emperor continued. Softly, patiently, endlessly. Through the centuries, the empire's people came to understand that memory was alive. It was not fixed in books or stone. It flowed gently, carried in whispers, in dreams, and in quiet acts of attention. Parents taught children to notice small details. Scholars observed patterns in old texts. Even artisans crafted works that reflected subtle truths learned in shadows. These practices ensured that lessons endured, that wisdom, even when erased from records, could still be carried forward. The vanished emperor's influence remained, a soft undercurrent beneath everyday life. Dreams became a secret classroom. Here, the young learned courage and patience. The middle-aged learned reflection, and the elderly found guidance for the twilight of their days. Every dream carried a story, a fragment of knowledge from those who had come before, and at the heart of these stories was the vanished emperor. He moved quietly, never forcing insight, never startling the mind, but guiding gently, like moonlight over still water. He was a teacher in absence, a presence in silence, and a reminder that knowledge could persist even when it seemed lost. Through this delicate interplay of memory and dream, the empire preserved its essence. Generations learned not only to remember, but to value the quiet moments that carried wisdom. And so, the story of the vanished emperor was not only a story of erasure, but a story of endurance. A story of lessons that survive the passing of time, and of dreams that keep knowledge alive. Even as centuries continued to unfold, even as the empire's shape shifted and changed, his legacy remained. It lingered softly, invisibly, in every whispered story, in every careful reflection, in every dream that taught more than the waking world could hold. The vanished emperor's influence was found not only in dreams or legends, but in the quiet rhythm of everyday life. A scholar pausing to observe the way ink flows on parchment. A child noticing how sunlight drifts across the floor at dusk. A farmer feeling the subtle changes in wind before the rain. These small, ordinary moments carried traces of his wisdom. Lessons not written in books, but encoded in attention, patience, and observation. The empire taught that life itself could be a teacher, and every experience, no matter how small, could carry a story. The vanished emperor's teachings whispered through gestures, through gentle curiosity, and through the quiet awareness of the world around. Even seemingly insignificant acts became bridges to understanding. Lighting a candle before sleep, listening to the rustle of leaves, observing the patterns in water or clouds, all were reminders of the lessons carefully preserved through time. These routines became rituals of reflection, They reminded the people that even when history erased names, the essence of wisdom remained. And through daily life, the vanished emperor's presence was felt, softly guiding thought, action, and imagination. The lessons traveled silently, from one generation to the next, teaching that understanding can survive erasure, that insight can be found in quiet moments, and that even absence has a way of shaping the present. Sleep, reflection, and mindful attention intertwined. Dreams, small rituals, and gentle observation worked together, carrying the vanished emperor's influence forward without the need for recognition or reward. And so, in the calm rhythm of ordinary life, his story lived on, not as grandeur, not as fame, but as quiet guidance, soft and persistent, present in every gentle breath of the empire. Night fell across the empire, and with it, the world slowed. Shadows lengthened, lanterns flickered, and the soft hum of evening filled the air. It was in these hours that the vanished emperor's influence was strongest. Dreams became a quiet pathway, carrying fragments of knowledge and wisdom through minds open to gentle guidance. A young student slept in a small room, and in the dream, hallways stretched endlessly, lined with scrolls that whispered secrets. Each step was deliberate, each shadow meaningful, and though the student woke remembering only fragments, the lessons lingered like soft echoes, shaping thought without effort. In another home, a craftsman paused his work at dusk, feeling the subtle rhythm of his tools, the pattern of his hands, the flow of creation itself. In that quiet attention, he unknowingly honored the emperor's teachings. To observe carefully, to move thoughtfully, to allow wisdom to arise in small, natural ways. Repetition became a teacher. Stories told again and again. Melodies hummed nightly. Rituals performed quietly. All reinforced the soft presence of the vanished emperor. Even the light of the moon played its part, casting shadows that hinted at paths unseen, reminding those who noticed that history is never truly erased, that wisdom can survive even the quietest, gentlest whispers. Sleep carried the lessons forward, and the mind, gently attuned, absorbed them naturally. Each breath, each heartbeat, each flicker of imagination became a thread connecting past and present, linking ordinary lives to the enduring story of a ruler erased, yet never truly gone. In this way, the empire's people lived with guidance always near, even if unseen, even if unspoken, and the vanished emperor, moving softly through dreams and quiet moments, remained a teacher, a guardian of thought, and a presence in the calm night. The night deepened over the empire, and the soft glow of lanterns cast long shadows across empty streets. Even in the stillness, life continued quietly, moving like a slow, gentle river. It was in these hours that the vanished emperor's presence whispered most clearly, not as a figure in the flesh, but as a guiding light within dreams, a quiet teacher moving between thought and memory. In the palace, the echo of past rulers lingered. Hallways seemed longer, doors appeared where none existed, and the faint rustle of scrolls carried messages across time. Outside, villagers felt the rhythm of night, a child's laughter in the moonlight, the soft tapping of rain on rooftops, the gentle sway of trees in the wind. Each sound and movement carried subtle lessons, passed down without words, through careful observation and quiet attention. The vanished emperor's influence was woven into this rhythm. Every repetition of a story, every ritual of reflection, every pause before sleep, became a thread connecting minds across generations. Dreams reflected these threads, sometimes vivid, sometimes abstract. They offered guidance without insistence, softly shaping understanding and awareness. Even those unaware of history could feel it. A sudden insight in the middle of the day, a fleeting memory that seemed too sharp to be random. A calm certainty that the world was larger and deeper than it appeared. Night after night, these quiet lessons continued. Sleep became a sacred rhythm, a gentle space where wisdom survived erasure, and the vanished emperor, erased from history but present in essence, remained a teacher in the stillness. In every shadow, every breath, every heartbeat, he lingered, soft, patient, and enduring. A presence felt in the gentle pause between waking and dreaming, in the calm that carries the mind into night, where lessons from centuries past continue to unfold. The moon hung low over the empire, casting silver light across rooftops, rivers, and silent courtyards. Shadows danced softly in the gentle breeze, and the world seemed to breathe in unison with the quiet night. It was in this stillness that the vanished emperor's story flowed the strongest. Not in grand proclamations, not in scrolls or monuments, but in the subtle, almost imperceptible rhythm of life. Lanterns flickered with the stories of rulers erased from history. Wind carried whispers of wisdom through trees, across streets, and into sleeping homes. Even the smallest actions, an artisan's careful touch, a scholar's thoughtful pause, echoed lessons long forgotten by the world above, but preserved in the quiet of night. Dreams became a sanctuary. In dreams, corridors stretched infinitely, rooms held countless scrolls, and each shadow carried insight. The vanished emperor moved gently, always guiding, never commanding. He taught patience in observing patterns, mindfulness in noticing details, and quiet reflection in understanding the unseen. The rhythm of repetition carried these lessons further. Stories told softly at bedtime, rituals performed with care, and the gentle unfolding of night itself, all wove together into a tapestry of guidance and memory. Even those who did not know his name felt the presence of his wisdom, a calm certainty, a fleeting insight, or a dream that lingered long after awakening, could be traced back to his gentle influence. And so, as the night deepened, the empire moved in harmony with the invisible threads, carrying wisdom across time. The vanished emperor remained, soft, patient, and eternal, a teacher in the shadows, a guide for those willing to listen. The night grew heavier, soft as velvet, and the empire settled into a gentle, rhythmic stillness. In the quiet of sleep, the vanished emperor moved unseen, guiding minds through halls of memory that were invisible by day. Children dreamed of endless gardens, their paths lined with lanterns, each lantern a lesson of patience, reflection, and quiet courage. Scholars and elders drifted through abstract corridors of thought, finding hidden insights in shadows, small truths that could not have been taught in waking hours. Every repetition of the stories, every quiet ritual, every soft pause, reinforced patterns of understanding that escaped the records of history. And yet, though the patterns repeated, each moment was subtly different. A new insight, a unique dream, a gentle twist in the rhythm of learning. The emperor's guidance was not about commands or order, but about fostering awareness and careful attention, teaching through presence without presence, through dreams without explanation, through silence without emptiness. By observing, reflecting, and dreaming, the people of the empire carried forward knowledge that had been erased from records, but not from the flow of life itself. In every heartbeat, every quiet breath before sleep, his lessons persisted. Soft, patient, and enduring. The moonlight shifted gently across the empire, illuminating quiet streets, flowing rivers, and the stillness of ancient courtyards. In dreams, the vanished emperor led travelers through new corridors. Rooms appeared that had never existed, filled with soft lantern light and scrolls inscribed with secrets of patience and understanding. A young apprentice walked slowly, noticing the subtle movement of shadows, the patterns in flowing water, the gentle hum of wind through trees. Each step taught something new, a lesson about balance, a whisper about careful observation, a hint of insight that could not be learned in the daylight. Even the simplest objects carried meaning. A falling leaf could remind one to let go. A river's gentle curve could show the value of adaptation. A candle flame could illuminate the way forward in moments of doubt. The emperor never spoke loudly. He did not impose or demand. He allowed each dreamer to interpret, to reflect, to absorb in their own way. And with each night, these small lessons accumulated. thread by thread, dream by dream, weaving wisdom into the fabric of life. Though history had erased his name, his presence remained. Soft, patient, and enduring, he moved gently through the minds of those who slept, guiding them toward reflection, awareness, and quiet understanding. And so, even in the darkest hours, even when the empire's streets were empty and silent, he remained a teacher. A whisper, a shadow in the gentle flow of night. The night stretched across the empire like a soft, endless veil. Lanterns swayed gently, casting shadows that whispered ancient stories. In dreams, the vanished emperor guided travelers through unfamiliar landscapes. Snow-covered mountains glimmered under moonlight. Silent forests stretched farther than the eye could see. Rivers wound in endless curves, carrying reflections of stars along their surfaces. A lone traveler paused at a quiet waterfall, noticing the rhythm of falling water, the soft sound of droplets, and the stillness that seemed to flow with the current. Every detail was a lesson. The patterns in the falling water taught patience. The way the snow clung to branches taught resilience. The silence of the forest taught reflection. The emperor never spoke. His guidance was subtle. A nod of a shadow, a gentle movement of light, a suggestion that understanding comes quietly through observation and awareness. Even those awake felt echoes of these lessons. A sudden insight while walking, a calm understanding in the middle of the day, a soft thought that seemed to arise from nowhere. Through countless generations, the same lessons were repeated, but always with new forms, new imagery, new subtle guidance. Each night offered something unique, a new thread to weave into the tapestry of wisdom. And so, while history may have erased his name, the vanished emperor continued to teach. Softly, persistently, through the quiet spaces of night, through dreams, reflections, and the rhythm of life itself. Night enveloped the empire in a soft, velvety calm. Stars reflected in quiet rivers, and lanterns swayed gently, casting long, flickering shadows. In dreams, the vanished emperor guided a new traveler, this time through a city forgotten by history, its streets empty, but alive with faint echoes of past lives. The traveler wandered slowly, noticing arches, bridges, and courtyards bathed in soft moonlight. Each corner revealed subtle lessons. The careful alignment of stones taught balance. The gentle curve of a bridge suggested patience, and the calm reflection of water mirrored the importance of observation. He passed a quiet marketplace, abandoned yet familiar, where the hum of past voices lingered like a soft melody. Every sound, every shadow, was a thread in the tapestry of wisdom. Even the smallest creatures carried lessons. A cat slinking silently along the rooftops reminded the traveler of caution and grace. A bird taking flight taught timing and awareness. The emperor moved unseen, guiding without speaking, letting the traveler learn through attention, reflection, and the quiet rhythm of the world. Repetition in the dream was subtle, yet purposeful. Each night built on the last, introducing new images, new insights, but always reinforcing patience, reflection, and the endurance of wisdom. Though history had removed his name, the emperor's presence persisted. Soft, patient, and unyielding, he lived in dreams, in quiet moments, and in the spaces between thought and memory. And so, even in the deepest night, even when the empire slept, his lessons traveled quietly, through imagination, reflection, and gentle observation, enduring beyond time, beyond records, beyond erasure. In the stillness of night, the dreamer wandered through a quiet palace, its halls shimmering with soft moonlight. Here, the vanished emperor appeared not as a ruler, but as a gentle presence felt in the flicker of lanterns. The rustle of curtains, and the whisper of footsteps on stone floors. Each dream was unique. A child might see a vast garden, where flowers bent slightly as if acknowledging their curiosity. An apprentice might wander a library, scrolls glowing faintly, revealing knowledge without words. The emperor guided subtly, sometimes a nod of shadow, sometimes a soft shift in light, and always a lesson embedded in observation. No words were necessary. Each detail in the dream offered insight. The slow fall of water, the curve of a tree branch, the pattern of shadows on a wall, all teaching patience, awareness, and quiet wisdom. Even upon waking, fragments remained. A sense of calm, a soft clarity, a gentle understanding that learning often comes through quiet attention, rather than force or instruction. The rhythm of repetition reinforced these lessons, yet each night brought new imagery, new symbols, new gentle guidance woven into dreams. And though the emperor's name was erased from history, his presence endured. Softly, invisibly, patiently, teaching, guiding, and shaping thought through the gentle spaces between sleep and wakefulness. Through these personal dream interactions, the wisdom of the vanished emperor became an intimate companion, present in the quietest moments of life, and in the calm, reflective spaces of the mind. The night deepened, folding the empire into quiet stillness. Lanterns swayed gently, rivers reflected the soft glow of the moon, and the world felt suspended, calm, and endless. In dreams, the vanished emperor moved like a gentle shadow, always present, never intrusive, guiding the mind through subtle lessons hidden in light and shadow. A winding bridge appeared over a silent river, The traveler paused, noticing the curve, the reflection, the rhythm of water. Here was patience. Here was careful observation. Here was the understanding that even paths that seem erased can still lead to insight. Elsewhere, a lone tree stretched its branches across the sky. Its leaves shimmered in moonlight, teaching the beauty of resilience and quiet endurance. The emperor's guidance was woven through these symbols. No words were needed. Every movement, every detail, every pattern in the dream offered insight into patience, reflection, and awareness. Repetition, gentle yet varied, reinforced these lessons. Each night brought new imagery, but always in harmony with previous nights. Like a melody with soft variations, calming and instructive. Even the smallest gestures carried meaning. A soft breath, a slow blink, a glance at the night sky, all became threads connecting the present to lessons from centuries past. Though history had erased his name, his presence endured quietly, persisting through dreams, symbols, and gentle reflection. The vanished emperor had become a teacher of the night, a guide in the spaces between thought and sleep, softly shaping awareness, insight, and calm. And so, the empire rested in quiet harmony. Each breath, each dream, each gentle observation, carrying forward the wisdom of one who had been erased, yet whose influence remained eternal. The empire slept under a sky filled with soft, flickering stars. The air was still, carrying only the gentle hum of night. In dreams, the vanished emperor moved among endless corridors of light and shadow, guiding travelers with subtle gestures and the quiet presence of wisdom. A soft staircase appeared, winding upward into the unknown. Each step taught patience. Each shadow revealed insight. Each turn offered a new perspective on observation and calm. The emperor's lessons were never forced. They were discovered through attention, through reflection, through noticing the smallest details. A leaf drifting in water, the curve of a bridge, the rhythm of falling rain. The night deepened, yet the dreams were warm, safe, and immersive. Soft repetition carried lessons gently, while new imagery, moonlit gardens, silent rivers, shadowed courtyards, added fresh guidance for the mind to absorb. Even in waking hours, fragments remained. A feeling of calm, a sudden clarity, a quiet understanding that life carried lessons if observed gently. The emperor's presence endured, softly, invisibly, persistently. Though erased from history, he lived in dreams, reflections, and subtle symbols, shaping awareness in ways both profound and delicate. The rhythm of night and dreams wove together, carrying forward wisdom through generations. Through sleep, through quiet reflection, through the gentle unfolding of life itself. And so, the empire rested, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, guided by a presence unseen, ever patient, ever enduring, teaching in silence, moving through shadows, and shaping minds with gentle, lasting insight. Night had fully embraced the empire, and every corner seemed to breathe in quiet harmony. Lanterns flickered softly, rivers glimmered under the moon, and the air held a gentle, unspoken calm. In dreams, the vanished emperor guided silently, moving through spaces both familiar and strange. Courtyards stretched infinitely, gardens glowed with soft light, and every pathway held a lesson, waiting to be noticed. A slow river appeared, flowing calmly between ancient trees. The traveler followed its winding path. Each ripple taught patience. Each reflection suggested observation. Each gentle current whispered the value of subtlety and awareness. Time in these dreams felt endless, and the repetition of imagery was soothing, never forced. The moon's glow, the soft sway of branches, the quiet rustle of leaves, all carried subtle guidance, embedding wisdom in the mind like a soft melody. Even the smallest details mattered. A shadow stretching across a wall, a falling leaf drifting slowly to the ground, a faint pattern in rippling water, all were invitations to notice, to reflect, to understand. The emperor's presence remained, soft and patient, a quiet guide in the spaces between thought and dream. Though erased from history, his lessons endured, flowing through generations, through sleep, through reflection, through the gentle rhythm of everyday life. And so, the empire rested in harmony, carrying forward wisdom without words, through quiet attention, through gentle observation, and through dreams that unfolded softly, endlessly, and peacefully. The night deepened to a soft, endless calm. Every corner of the empire seemed to pause, as if holding its breath, in quiet reflection. In dreams, the vanished emperor guided travelers through vast, open spaces. Mountains glimmered under starlight, forests whispered softly in the wind, and rivers curved gently, reflecting the moon's serene glow. The traveler walked slowly, noticing every subtle detail, the shimmer of leaves in the breeze, the curve of a branch against the sky, the pattern of shadows dancing across the ground. Each detail carried a lesson: patience, reflection, awareness, and gentle understanding. The emperor never spoke, but his presence shaped the dream, teaching without force, guiding without direction. Repetition in the dream was soothing, never monotonous. Lanterns flickered softly along unseen pathways. Water rippled gently, and the wind carried faint, comforting echoes of the past. Even the smallest acts of observation became meaningful. A slow breath, a glance at a distant star, a mindful step across soft grass. Each action connected the dreamer to the emperor's enduring wisdom. Though history had removed his name, his influence persisted in quiet, gentle ways, through dreams, through reflection, through observation. He remained a teacher, a guide, a presence that shaped thought and awareness, without ever needing recognition. The night carried these lessons forward, softly, persistently, endlessly, and the traveler, drifting between sleep and waking, absorbed the quiet guidance. Feeling calm, understanding, and deeply at peace, the night deepened, wrapping the empire in a quiet, endless calm. Every shadow, every lantern, every ripple in the water seemed to hum with gentle rhythm. In dreams, the vanished emperor guided travelers through familiar and yet ever-changing landscapes. Courtyards glimmered under soft moonlight. Rivers reflected stars like scattered lanterns, and forests whispered timeless secrets in the wind. The traveler moved slowly, noticing everything: the curve of a river, the sway of a branch, the soft flutter of leaves across stone pathways. Every detail carried a lesson: patience in the river's flow, resilience in the bending branches, reflection in the quiet, silver light. The emperor never spoke. His guidance was subtle, woven through observation, attention, and gentle awareness. Each night repeated these lessons, but with subtle variations. A new river, a new forest, a new flicker of lantern light, allowing wisdom to grow slowly, naturally, and persistently. Even waking life carried traces of these dreams. A soft understanding in quiet moments, a feeling of calm, a gentle awareness that life itself could teach, without force, without urgency. Though erased from history, the emperor's influence endured, softly, invisibly, persistently. He remained a teacher, a guide, a presence in the rhythm of night, in dreams, and in the quiet spaces between thought and sleep. The night was still. Lanterns swayed softly, rivers shimmered gently, and the empire rested in calm silence. In dreams, the vanished emperor moved quietly, never commanding, never seen, yet always present in the rhythm of the world. The traveler walked slowly through soft, glowing gardens, through courtyards bathed in moonlight, and across bridges spanning calm waters. Every step, every breath, Every glance held a lesson: patience, awareness, reflection, and gentle understanding. Time felt endless. Shadows and light moved together like a soft melody, and the repetition of gentle imagery brought peace and clarity. The Emperor's guidance had endured, even though his name was erased from history. Through dreams, through quiet observation, through the rhythm of life itself, his wisdom persisted, soft and patient, touching minds, hearts, and souls in subtle, enduring ways. Now, the empire rested. The traveler drifted peacefully through dreams, absorbing calm, insight, and understanding. The night carried the lessons forward, softly, gently, endlessly. And so, the vanished emperor, erased from records but present in essence, remained a quiet teacher, a guide through shadows and light, through sleep, reflection, and the gentle flow of life. May his wisdom linger in quiet moments, in dreams, in reflection, and in the calm, patient rhythm of your own mind. Sleep now, deeply, peacefully, and let the lessons of the vanished emperor unfold softly. Through the night, through dreams, and into the gentle awakening of tomorrow.